watch the way, especially I'd say your parents, if you're lucky enough to sort of still see them and have them, the way your parents, especially your dad, will just look at you differently. Hello boys, how are we? If you're new here, I'm a psychology student trained to be a therapist. So on this channel we talk about positivity, mindset, well-being, mental health and all things like that. So if that sounds of interest, stick around. Today I wanted to talk about getting a job and why it's so important. I know that may sound slightly different to what's normally on this channel, and I also understand it might sound really obvious that it's important to have a job, but I wanted to specifically approach it from slightly different angles. I wanted to approach it more from the well-being angle, and that has two specific lanes and two specific sort of areas as to why having a job is so important, and that is structure and money. We'll start with structure. So when I say structure, I don't mean anything massive like the structure of society or why it's important for people to have jobs in that area. What I mean is the structure of your literal life in terms of what you do between when you wake up and when you go to bed. Now, a lot of people's lives, including mine, and sleep patterns completely fell apart during those first couple of lockdowns back in 2020. And obviously there was a lot of other factors in the world, but the main reason is people who either lost their jobs or got furloughed or whatever, they had no structure anymore. Put simply, you have no reason to wake up in the morning. I know that may sound a bit morbid and extreme, but what I mean is, if someone asked you every day for a month, or Monday to Friday, every day for a month, you have to wake up at 6 AM. No specific reason, but you have to wake up at 6 AM. That is just a task that you've been set. Maybe for the first couple of days, or maybe even the first week, you'd be fine. But after a while, your body can't help but go, why am I waking up at 6 AM? I'm tired, I have no reason to be. You can't physically force yourself out of bed without that structure. Whereas if you had a job, even if it was paying absolute peanuts, and you had to wake up at 6 every day to get to that job, you're not going to oversleep, or I'd like to hope you won't. But the point is, your brain physically struggles to actually get you up and sort of wipe off those cobwebs when it has no reason to, because as much as you want to be disciplined or whatever, having absolutely no reason to get out of bed, your brain is going to choose the option that your body feels like it needs, which is more rest. Obviously that's first thing in the morning. If we go back 8 hours, what I sort of mentioned earlier a minute ago, your sleep as well. If you know you've got nothing to wake up for, it's really hard to sort of get to bed on time, because as much as you want to, with all the distractions we've got with phones and TV and video games and everything like that, if you're sat there and it's sort of getting to 8:30, 9:30 and you go, oh, I've got to be asleep by 10 because I've got to be up at 6 or whatever, you're going to be laying there, and as much as you want to have that discipline, you're going to go, well, if I wake up at 6 and I'm tired, I can just roll over and go back to bed because I have nowhere to be. And being disciplined and waking up at that time is hard enough. It's even harder when you've got your entire body fighting against you to not do it. We've spoken about sort of getting to sleep early and waking up on time, but you still got the rest of the day. And as much as having nothing to do or nowhere to be maybe sounds like an amazing thing, I've got all the time in the world, I've got all this time to myself. Again, if we think back to the lockdowns, that got pretty boring pretty damn quickly. Obviously again, that's an extreme example, nothing was open, there was nothing to do, but at the same time, sort of something we'll go on to in a minute, if you haven't got any income, if you haven't got any money, as much as it might sound amazing, oh, I've got all the time to see my friends, go on holiday, with what money? What are you doing? Because unless you've found something that you can do for free all the time, which is pretty much maybe going for a walk or something like that, as we found out in the lockdowns, there's only a certain amount of walks you can go for in a day before you start to go a little bit mad. Again, there have been so many studies that show too many options can cause paralysis, and you end up just making no decision at all. Like, if you just got given a blank week and your friend was like, oh, when do you want to meet up next week? And you went, and they just went, oh, I literally, any time, any day, I'm free. You'd be like, oh, all right, and you'd probably end up just never picking anything. Whereas if they said, oh, I've got Tuesday or Thursday evening free from 6 PM, which one suits you? Bang, you've got your options, because you've now actually got a structure to form your day and form your calendar around. That moves on to the second reason, money, that I spoke about earlier. Now, we've just sort of gone over sort of no pun intended, like monetary, tangible benefits of money, of like you can physically go out and do things, but there's actually a hell of a lot of well-being side to things to earning money as well. It was something I never really appreciated, to be honest. I'm very lucky, both my parents are teachers, like we were never millionaires driving Bugattis or anything like that, but I've always grown up comfortably. Like I always got birthday presents, I got a holiday every year. I left school and went straight into work. So until I came to uni, I had never once had a month where I hadn't earned a paycheck. And although I used to moan about work, the stress that I'd never actually felt before is the stress of literally having no money. And I can now speak from experience, and I'm sure a lot of you guys will know, especially if you're sort of a younger man watching this, financial stress is one of the worst stresses you can have. It literally sort of keeps people up at night. As I say, I'm very fortunate that I've had it on a sort of a minimal level of like being a university student, but obviously you see these people that are maybe in their older years and they're in debt or mortgage, or they're struggling to pay bills and things like that, and that's why there's so many support groups for this sort of thing, because not earning money and not being able to pay your way in life, especially as a man, not PC, but it's got to be said, especially as a man, is one of the worst stresses you can have, because you feel like you're not taking responsibility and caring for things that are important. Obviously started off a bit on the negative side there, but I wanted to sort of talk about the positive side of money. On the flip side of having stresses, earning your first wage is life-changing. Again, if you're a young man sort of watching this, maybe you've got your first part-time job or something like that, you can sort of speak to this. Or if you finished university and you're actually going to get a full-time job where sort of it's not just a bit of beer money or a bit of rent money, you're actually sort of going to have disposable income afterwards. It's absolutely life-changing. You just feel so much more responsible. You feel so much more independent. It helps you put a value on things. You don't feel so guilty if every time you're buying something you've got to ask your parents for a tenner, or your mate spotting you 10 quid to get something. You can actually feel like you can go out there and buy things that make you happy without feeling guilty about it. It may sound ridiculous, but a huge part of earning money is respect. Now, I'm not saying we want to go back to a world where a man's value is solely put on his income. Of course not. You bring to the table more than what your wage is, who you are and everything like that is obviously very important. But what I mean is, in terms of your intrinsic value of how you feel about yourself, most importantly, but also your parents, maybe a partner or whatever, watch the way, especially I'd say your parents, if you're lucky enough to sort of still see them and have them, the way your parents, especially your dad, will just look at you differently the first time you sort of come home and go, oh, I've got the food shopping today, guys, or you're out for dinner together as a family and you go, don't worry, I've got this, I'm earning now, don't worry, like you lot have treated me for 14, 16, 18 years, however old you are, like I'll get this. Even if it's something small that you just couldn't do before you were earning, that it will just give you that sense of independence and power that you'll just never have felt before. I still remember my first ever sort of taking paycheck home, and I started working later than I should have really. Just because of the way my social life was at school, I didn't really drink till I left school. So basically, when you're that age, all you need money for is sort of KFC and alcohol, and I didn't really do either of those two things. So I didn't start working until I turned 18, which is much later than I'd advise anyone else to start working. Again, as I touched on earlier, sort of speaking from personal experience, something I'm going through at the moment, just sort of in that gap between my second year and third year, I obviously need to work and earn money over summer. And frankly, it's been harder finding something than I thought it was going to be. Obviously, I had a lot of experience before university, sort of working in offices and sales and everything like that. But just because I've got that deadline where I can only work until sort of the middle or end of September because of going back to university, not many companies are sort of wanting to take someone on if they can only be there 12 weeks, and because of that I'm struggling to find something, and because of that at the moment I'm not earning any money, which doesn't make me feel good, and it is a cause of stress. I'm not sort of homeless or anything like that. Again, as I said, I'm very, very fortunate, but that sense of pride, like I didn't realise until the other day, and I did a bit of journaling, like it is getting me down more than I realised that it was. Look, I think I've made the point. It shouldn't be sort of a rocket science point that having a job is important, especially as a young man, but I wanted to sort of break it down from sort of the other angles of things that I've sort of spoken about there, rather than just the basics of why it's important to have a job. Like I didn't even sort of touch on the maturity and sort of the social contact and being around people and the learning and things like that, but those are things you guys already knew. I wanted to sort of come at it from that specific well-being side of things. This isn't a financial advice channel or anything like that, but all I'd say is for young men, if you are sort of getting your first job or you're in your first job, have sort of a list of stuff that you want to buy, and not silly things. Make sure you got the basics before you sort of go out and splurge. Have you got 2 nice suits, one blue, one grey? I don't know. Have you got 2 pairs of jeans that you actually really like, one blue, one black? Just sort of the basics where that's what you need before you start going out and doing fancy cocktails and things like that, or fancy dinners. Have you actually got everything you need, where if you lost your job tomorrow, you go, all right, cool, I've got some basics that I can start again with. That would sort of be my only advice on that side of things. Thank you for making it all the way to the end. I do appreciate you guys who stick around. If you did like it, please do consider liking and subscribing. I drop 2 new videos every week. I know I normally do Monday, Thursday, but I'm thinking I'm going to just sort of mix up the days, but there will still just be 2 videos every week. Comment any other thoughts you have below, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, take care, lads.